Welcome to the HRchat Show, one of the world's most downloaded and shared podcasts designed for HR pros, talent execs, tech enthusiasts, and business leaders. For hundreds more episodes and what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.
Hello, this is your host today, Bill Banham. The focus of today's HRchat show is organizational culture. LHH, the professional talent solutions and advisory company and a part of the Adecco Group, recently announced a partnership with Barrett Values Centre to bolster their culture offerings with an organizational culture solution. On the heels of this, I welcome Gaëlle de la Fosse, President of LHH and a member of the Executive Committee of the Adecco Group, back to the HRchat podcast to dive into the importance of investing in a strong organizational culture and to share some tactics on how leaders can do that. Gaëlle, it's my pleasure to welcome you back to the HRchat show. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
So for those folks who are not fortunate enough to have listened to our first conversation just yet, firstly, what are you doing? Come on, sort it out. And secondly, Gaëlle, perhaps you can take a minute or two and reintroduce yourself. Tell our listeners a bit about your background, what do you get up to over at LHH? And this time around, because I didn't ask you last time, please also tell me, what's the best thing about your job?
I am the global president of LHH. My background previously to leading LHH, and I'll get into what LHH is in a minute. So my background is in management consulting, 20 years of management consulting in different organizations, doing projects all over the world. I transitioned to become the CEO of a fashion brand in Paris. And now I'm the president of LHH. LHH is a professional talent solutions and advisory player. It's part of the Adecco Group. And so the role we have is really to prepare workers and leadership teams for the new world of work. And our solutions span across recruitment, career transition and mobility, coaching, leadership development, and upskilling and reskilling. So really a full service provider for professional talent. And we have 8,000 colleagues and coaches doing this work in over 66 countries. And we work with about 15,000 organizations each year. And we support more than 500,000 candidates and employees each year doing that. I think you asked me also what I liked most about my job. I transitioned to HR consulting 2 years ago, and it's really a very important decision for me because I believe that talent in organizations is increasingly important to the performance of companies. But also it has a key social impact. And I think for me, that's the purpose. And that's what I like the most is really the impact. I talked about, we support more than 500,000 people each year, and we help them either find, the great job they were looking for, or we help them upskill and reskill to get a better job. We help them, coach them in situations where they're maybe struggling, or they're trying to make their team work more effectively. And so for me, it's about the impact for the people that we're helping, and being part of, how the world of work is transforming. I find that very energizing, actually. It's a great project.
Well, listeners, you can't see this because it's an audio podcast, but Gaëlle was beaming there where she gave that answer. That's what she does. I like that. So as I mentioned in the intro, LHH recently announced a partnership with Barrett Values Centre to bolster their culture offerings with a organizational culture solution. And therefore, what we're focusing on in part 2 of our conversation is the importance of investing in a strong organizational culture. And Gaëlle's going to share some tactics around that. So let's get into it now then. First question for you around that. Why is organizational culture an important investment? I mean, come on, everybody, it's an important investment. But why is that the case, especially with many companies at the moment focused on cutting costs? You know, for example, when in our previous conversation, we spoke about how AI is augmenting lots of duties and roles and perhaps cost savings there. Give us your take.
Yeah, I think, you said especially with many companies focused on cutting costs. I actually think it's because there is so much change and, effort on cost cutting that it is really critical for companies to create that link and to create that culture. And, companies are only as strong as their employees. And so I really believe that having a really effective organizational culture is key to attract and retain the workforce that can adapt to the current and future challenges that any company is bound to have in this environment. And so I think investing in the workforce is, I think it's just a matter of I think it has to become a key investment, and it can't be an afterthought, and we link it, you can tell now that it's linked more and more to performance. We have many studies that show that organizations with a robust culture have, higher employee engagement than those with cultures that can be a little bit misaligned. And also, more engaged teams achieve greater profitability because there's higher level of motivations, there's lower level of absenteeism, there's lower level of employee turnover. So I think, having the right culture or having or not having the right culture or a misaligned culture actually has a lot of very important impacts on the performance of an organization. So I think that's what justifies the investment that companies are, I would say, increasingly understanding that they need to make.
Thank you very much. So a key part of having a company culture, or a key part of developing a company culture, from the hundreds of conversations that I've had on this show, certainly, is around the mission of the organization, or as Simon Sinek would say, the why of the organization. Who should define that why? Is that the leadership? Should that be the employees? Should that be the HR department? Should it be all of the above? What's your take?
I think it's really important that the leadership team embodies the values and the culture, especially in moments of uncertainty, like downsizing. You mentioned cost cutting, and the AI transformation. I think getting that sense of direction from the leadership, I think, is really important. I think a lot of when we talk about mismatch between what the values are that maybe are written on a PowerPoint or are written on the walls of the office and what's actually lived by the people, that's really where that leads to issues of employee engagement and turnover. So it has to start by the leaders. I also think the leaders, not only do they need to uphold the values, but we have a lot of we help a lot of companies kind of think about what their new values are, or they're going through an integration, or they're going through some an important moment in the company's life, and so they're reworking their culture, their values, and the leadership really needs to be invested in that work, because if they're meant to be accountable afterwards, they have to participate, and they have to be really in the driver's seat of that. So I know a lot of times, the CHROs are the ones that are pushing for this, but I don't think this is a topic. It's a really very critical topic that shouldn't be only, in the CHRO purview. I think the CHROs and the HR teams are crucial strategic partners in driving this. But I think it needs to start really right from the top, from the CEOs themselves, to really make sure that they have the culture that it was going to make them successful.
Thank you. So as part of your answer there, you spoke about engagement, and you spoke about retention of employees. So let's put it all the way back, if you don't mind, and instead let's focus on attracting awesome talent and attracting top candidates. How does a strong organizational culture help companies to do that and to attract the best talent out there? What is it about having a powerful employer brand which can make the difference to an organization?
I think when we have a recent study called the Global Workforce of the Future, and what we see in that is that what workers say they need to be at their best is quite consistent, and I think that's very linked to who you are able to attract and who you're able to retain. And so what comes out of the study is that workers, what they need is a healthy work-life balance. They want to be trusted to make decisions and have autonomy. They want to be able to apply their skills and expertise to actually have a meaningful impact and feel that their work is really meaningful. They want to have a positive and inclusive work environment that promotes collaboration and teamwork, and they want to feel supported by their colleagues and their managers. So I think the fact that all of these things are actually what makes culture. It's not only about, the purpose and the why. It's actually how people live their lives day to day in companies. And I think that is that should be how companies attract talent, because they're able to guarantee in a way that the workers that come in and the new employees can actually live that experience, a positive working experience day to day with their colleagues. And we talk a lot about burnout, and I think this is a really big topic today. And burnout is linked to overwork, but it's also linked to this mismatch of culture that people are experiencing in companies. I think that is why culture needs to be an important topic. I think companies need to figure out whether there's a mismatch, need to figure out whether the culture that they have is really the culture that will make them successful in the future, and will, enable their workforce to be as effective and as engaged and as motivated as possible.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned in a previous answer that you believe that leaders should take the lead when it comes to shaping the culture, defining that why. How then can leaders navigate some of the biggest roadblocks that companies face to building an adaptable culture? And maybe as part of that answer, perhaps you can share what some of those big roadblocks are in your experience as a leader.
Yeah. No, I think the fact that the world is changing is at such a rapid pace. We really need, and I think as leaders, to really look at what needs to be changed. And I talked about agility earlier. I think that's, a really key word. And I think the concerns that leaders have in terms of, the roadblocks are a lot around change. So, we run a lot of surveys, and what we see is that the main concerns that people have are around the agility and ability to respond to constant change, the ability to adapt to business reorganizations and restructurings. A lot of companies are going through that, and it's not always easy to navigate that. And the third, I would say, issue is adapting to remote and hybrid work, because that also has there are consequences also to that in how culture is lived and how culture is managed in a company. So I think the key roadblocks are those, and we really need to make sure that the leaders are equipped to really manage that, and with the right soft skills to instill the right level of confidence, to make sure that the employees have the support and the transparency, the compassion that is necessary to navigate these things. So I think the ability to really have the right skills in these turbulent times, in terms of change management, are increasingly key, and that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that companies face today, and so that's why we believe that this is very linked to what we were saying earlier around the fact that company culture is now a key pillar of overall strategy for a lot of organizations, and we're increasingly helping companies to really work on that aspect to drive long-term organizational success, because we don't think that you can actually have a performing organization if you have a culture that is not aligned to your strategy and to what your people need. And that's why, you mentioned earlier that we had a new partnership with the Barrett Value Center. And so we're very excited to have this new partnership and to use their culture assessment tool to help clients really conduct an in-depth quantitative assessment for large-scale culture and values project. So this is really an important milestone for us to be able to advance in cultural transformation, and to make sure that this is not only a generic exercise, but it's actually really rooted deeply into the company and the expectation of the employees. And we actually use this ourselves. So I've seen firsthand how impactful this methodology is on the motivation of our teams and our ability to attract new talent.
Wonderful. And that takes us towards the end of this particular conversation. This is part 2 of 2. I'm just going to have to hound your team and get you back on again in the near future. Before we do wrap up, how can folks learn more about LHH? And the last time we spoke, you directed folks to connect with you on LinkedIn. So I'm going to change my question around that. What's a good connection request message to send you that'll make you say, yeah, I want to connect with this person?
I think anything about the topics that we mentioned, all of those are really key to me today. And so anything about, culture, skills, all of these topics, I will respond happily, and I'll engage in as many conversations as I have the opportunity to be invited to.
Perfect. And there'll be links to Gaëlle's LinkedIn profile, to LHH, to the report that she mentioned there in the conversation today and in the previous episode as well, in the show notes and in the article. So you can find all of those there, listeners. That just leaves me to say for today, Gaëlle, thank you again for being my guest.
Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you so much for having me.
And listeners, as always, until next time, happy working.
Thanks for listening to the HR Chat Show. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe and listen to some of the hundreds of episodes published by HR Gazette? And remember, for what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.